Hey, it's Declan Dunn with you with Pivot and Profit, and as you look over my shoulder, that amazing view reminds me of what every entrepreneur starts out with, a dream, a vision, seeing the ultimate end goal, and you can taste it, you can feel it. But what are the three key habits that lead to success for entrepreneurs that I've found in my own experience and in my research working with startups? Well, number one, I like to think about it from what the words mean. And an entrepreneur is somebody who both organizes a business, remember, there has to be some structure, and assumes the risk. That's the very first key that very few people understand. And that leads into the key habits that I've seen. And the number one key habit, devotion. And devotion means more than passion. I mean, a lot of people tell me, oh, I'm passionate. I'm going to start this business. I've got it in my heart. I can make it work. That's great. But the key habit of devotion means that you're not only into it emotionally but intellectually. The act of being emotionally and intellectually following a course of action. And what that is to me as a habit in entrepreneurs is simple. A lot of folks are really intellectual. They can think it and they really believe it. Other people are really driven by the heart and they're really passionate, but they're not quite looking at what happens, looking at what makes them change, looking at the ways things grow. A balance between the mind and the heart, making sure you fit in there to know that your devotion is not just based on, passion, which sometimes wanes. This does take a while, but also based on intellect, looking at it, measuring the results, and looking at the numbers and being able to be separate from just being too emotional. But the best entrepreneurs I know combine both of them. Key habit number two, persistence. And persistence is really a continuing behavior. What that means is you need to try again and again. And if somebody contacts you and doesn't like it, you may adapt, but sometimes you have to go back to them 2, 3, 4 times. Heck, in marketing, we know 5 times is one of the magic numbers before people even notice you. And so many people have the passion, but they don't have the persistence. So devotion, persistence, so that you know, not just from saying, I'm going to outwork everybody, by the way. That's not persistence. Bragging how hard you can work is not the only goal of an entrepreneur. Okay? You've got to do something different. You've got to stand out. And you've got to create a behavior that says, when I try these things out, then I'm going to do it. Then I'm going to adapt. And finally, the pivot. That's key habit number 3, is knowing how to pivot, which means you're the hub that the wheel goes around, and the wheel is turning. It changes the wheels of business, the wheels of our economy. You have to be able to recognize when your business shifts. If your idea is not the best idea, how do you do that? By being aware that through devotion, combining the intellect and the heart, through persistence, keeping with it, but not just doing that just to work it to death, but leading to the pivot. Everything serves a pivot. But if you're the hub at the center of the wheel, you've got to have some good team members. You've got to have mentors, people you listen to. That's the key to a pivot, because if you think you're alone and isolate yourself, you're missing the boat. No one is alone. We're all in the boat together. The pivot is not just a way of doing business, it's a way of living, both from a personal pivot and from a business level. Life does change, relationships change, business change. Bank on that. Think of yourself like you're in the middle of a raging river. You can either fight your way up against the river or realize you go with the flow. Watch out for the rocks that may be down the river. Steer yourself around and pivot and adapt, and always think of yourself as an entrepreneur as riding that river, so that you have to go around the rough waters, the deep waters, the rocks, the threats, the piece of wood in there that can sink your boat. You have to recognize that pivots are just a part of the way of doing business. But hey, these are just a few ideas I've had as I write this book and do this podcast. What do you think? What are the key habits that you found for success for entrepreneurs? I'd love to hear it, and I'd love to engage you to learn how you do it. This is Declan, and I'm done with this Pivot and Profit podcast, the 3 keys to success for entrepreneurs, the 3 key habits.